All right, producers, engineers, I'm coming for you this time. Last week, I gave the artist the unspoken rules of the studio, and this week, I'm turning it back on us. So you may think the studio is my house, my rules, but there are some things that you can do to give the artist a better experience, get more repeat business, and to just make the studio a much more fun and creative place for everyone. So if you don't know, I'm Adam, and I've been producing artists for over 10 years now. I've run 2 different commercial studios, and now I'm here to help you improve as a producer as well. So if that's something that you're into, then hit that subscribe button. And let's turn this list into a game. If you want to count up how many of these you disagree with and leave it as a comment at the end of the video, well, whoever disagrees with me the most, I'll bake you a cake. So let's dive into it, starting with a big one. Do handle the money conversations up front. Artists have told me time and time again that they hate, and I mean hate, getting unclear answers when it comes to pricing and budgets. While every project is different, you should have some sort of a ballpark price that you charge for services. If the artist has to pry to get you to give them a real quote, that's going to be a big turnoff. Don't use the same sounds for every single project. I remember a certain rock producer that I followed, they started getting really, I don't want to say lazy, but lazy with their drum sample choices. And they were basically using the same triggers on every project that came across their desk. They ended up working on a country folk record with an artist that I liked, and sure enough, they slapped the same exact samples on it. There's a fine line between artists are coming to me because they love my sound, and everything that they work on sounds the same. So use your ears and make the best choices for each project. Do get some candles, incense, an oil diffuser, a salt lamp, basically anything to set the vibe and make your room feel cozy. Don't dismiss the artist's ideas. Too many times, I've seen producers try and make artists stick to a specific vision that the producer has for the music, totally discounting the artist's opinion and ideas. At the end of the day, producing is a service business, and it's not really worth blowing up a relationship to get your way when you're working on someone else's music. You're not in the band, you're not the artist, and most of the time, they're the ones paying you, so incorporate their vision into the final product. Do have basic amenities like water, coffee, and some simple snacks available for your artists. Hit up Costco or BJ's and grab some basics. It's worth it to not look like a cheap son of a gun. And bonus points if you have a fun way to make coffee, like a Chemex. And by the way, lots of singers like room temperature water, so keep a few bottles out of the fridge for them. And also, it's important to have a kettle or some way to heat up water for tea too, so keep that in mind. Don't be a bad communicator. If you've got a cold and you're gonna be like a week behind on mixes, let people know on day 2 instead of them finding out because they hit you up on day 7 wondering where their song is. Being proactive about communication is an important part of running a business, so make sure that your artists are in the loop with whatever's going on. Do have contracts that spell out your terms. You are the business in this transaction. So be proactive about communicating your terms, sending contracts, and making sure that you have a list of deliverables that you provide when you agree to a price. If mixing and mastering aren't included in your rate, mention that. If you charge extra to make instrumentals, stems, and backing tracks, then include that in your initial quote. Avoid surprises in the finance department at all costs, and your client satisfaction will go way up. Don't undercut yourself by charging almost nothing. You need to be charging your artists enough money that you feel good about offering them a high level of service. That doesn't mean that you should sell out on your boundaries for more money, but don't be so cheap that you resent having to do revisions or retracking a part or two if it's necessary. Do tear down and set up on your own time. If someone is coming in to record drums and you're still set up from a vocal session that you had last week, that is not a great look. In an industry where so many people bill hourly, I get that we deserve to be paid for our time setting up, but on the flip side, I've heard so many people complain that they paid for 4 hours of studio time just to spend the first 2 watching the engineer take their sweet time putting mics on stands or packing up from the previous session. Things will move really quickly if you have a house drum kit already mic'd up, some amps mic'd up and ready to go, and a vocal chain set up to get going quickly. If you showed up to the dentist and they had to set up the X-ray machine out of the box every single time, you'd probably feel like you were wasting time watching them assemble the thing. Same goes for taking mics out of their boxes and cases and putting them on stands every single time you have to do anything. Like if you're gonna be recording drums, you have a ballpark of what mics you're gonna be using, just put them on the stands, have them out, have some cables ready to go. Don't trash talk the artist's old recordings or old producers. It's a pretty bad look to talk down on an artist's old music because someone else produced it. It's okay to be excited about a project that you're starting with a new artist, but don't put down the people that they worked with before. It just comes across as insecure and rude, and it doesn't get you anywhere. Do clean your studio between sessions. And I'm not talking about cables and mics here, more so dust bunnies. We're in the studio every day. We get used to being there. But every time an artist walks into your space, you're making a first impression. So tidy up, do some dusting, organize your shelves, vacuum or mop, whatever you need to do. This goes double for the bathroom, by the way. If you wouldn't be comfortable with a first date using your studio's bathroom, then it's time to clean it up. Don't focus too much on impressing other producers. If you're hell-bent on a certain idea because you think it'll make you look like a genius producer, you're losing the plot a little. I have my own project to make cool stuff that I think is great. If I'm working on someone else's project, my goal is to bring their vision to life in the best way possible. And trying to impress other producers or music industry people with your clever work on their records, that just isn't it. Do focus on the maintenance of your equipment. It's not a good look to have a bunch of gear that's in disrepair. If your guitar only works if you hold it a certain way, and your preamp knobs are all crackly, and your keyboard works really well except for the last few keys, that's not a great vibe. Letting little repairs pile up is a great way to add unneeded friction to your sessions. And side note, it is super important to double check the stuff that only the artists use. I had a pair of tracking headphones that was getting pretty blown out, and I didn't realize it until one of my artists asked if that's how they were supposed to sound. So make sure to check up on the stuff that they use every once in a blue moon too. Do set some ground rules regarding your boundaries and your space. If you don't want people eating in the control room or putting drinks on the amps, or you don't prefer to get texts and calls after business hours about work stuff, let people know in advance. It's important to make sure that artists respect you as a human being as well as someone who is letting them into their creative space. But it's also your job to establish that early so that the tone stays positive. Don't be a jerk about sending stems or sessions. I've seen endless arguments online and IRL about who owns the stems or the sessions to a project. And frankly, I think it's a totally pointless argument. If an artist wants their sessions, I see no reason to play hardball and damage your relationship with an artist because they're asking you to send them something. For one, it should be a pretty quick process to export stems. For me, it takes about 3 minutes in Pro Tools, and all my sessions live in Dropbox anyway, so I wouldn't even bother charging to transfer them to you. But second, you should be making it clear what you do and don't offer in your deliverables list that you give to the artist. So there should be no confusion about their ability to get access to stems or sessions after the fact, whether or not that's something that you offer. Do get insurance for your musical instruments. I've always had a Music Pro policy, and it's not super expensive. And if anything happens like a burglary or a flood, I have peace of mind that my gear is covered. I even have my computer and camera gear covered as well. And if you aren't going to do this, at least take inventory of all your gear and its serial numbers so you can report it properly if it's ever stolen. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Just because you're excited about a project, that doesn't mean that you should start telling the artist that you can definitely get it in front of record labels or get their music placed in a movie or whatever else. Just focus on making great art together. And then when it's over, if you have any connections, you can feel it out, see where it goes. But telling people that you can probably get Taylor Swift's manager to listen to their song only for that lead to go nowhere, that's a pretty big bummer. And also, as far as overpromise, underdeliver, if you think that it's going to take you 3 days to do a mix, Don't say you're going to do it in 2 or 1 to try to impress them and make them feel good about it. Just tell them honestly, hey, 3 to 4 days is probably when I'll have this done. You don't want to like lie about timelines or make things up just to kind of impress them with how quick you're going to do it. Do follow up with your artists after they leave the studio. Congratulate them on release day. Share their stuff once it's out. I've worked with a lot of musicians who are absolutely shocked when I come to one of their shows. And they always tell me how much they appreciate it because none of their other producers bothered to show up to any. And last but not least, here are the big ones. Do have fun with music. We are here to make great art, to have fun, and to make a career out of it. So try your best to keep a positive outlook. There's a reason that the stereotype of a grumpy engineer with poor personal hygiene and a disdain for anyone successful exists, but I think we can do our best to kind of break that stereotype and start to change the vibe about engineering. Don't overbook yourself. You want to have enough time to make sure that every project turns out the way that you want, and rushing through everything because you've got too much on your plate will only lead to burnout and unhappy artists. Make sure that you leave time in your schedule for things like editing and revisions. There are lots of producers that will knock out recordings super quick, but their turnaround time on getting things edited and mixed is extremely long. If this is you, consider getting some help in the form of a mix assistant, or maybe just focus on recording or just mixing, or bump up your rates a little so that you don't have to be so booked all the time. And for the grand finale, do be nice. The number one most important thing is just to be nice to your artists. Drop whatever ego you have at the door and treat everyone like equals, like peers, and you will have a much better time. And this especially applies to creative feedback. You should be more like Jack Black in The School of Rock and less like the really mean guy from Whiplash. If you feel like a big bad producer acting like Gordon Ramsay and calling people an idiot sandwich, there are going to be some artists that will respond well to that, but there are just as many that will absolutely hate the final product, even if the songs come out objectively good, because they had such a bad time making it. It is not our job to bully people into making what we think is good music. So if you can't communicate your ideas without being a big jerk about it, then take some time and figure out how to do that. All right, producers, engineers, that's it. That's my do's and don'ts in the studio. Let me know in the comments which ones you agree with, which ones you disagree with, and then check out this video here next where I break it down for all the bands and the artists.